just go, wow, I can't even believe, didn't even take a step back to think about how my information is being shared utilizing my car. So today I'm going to talk about this report that the Mozilla Foundation put out. And I think, for those of you who haven't heard the story, you're going to be pretty taken back by it. Welcome back. Welcome back. This is The People's Voice. I am Trey Evans, and I am The People's Voice. Thank you again for checking out the podcast this week. As always, it's greatly appreciated. As always, we say thank you to everyone who's listening today. We do understand that you have options in terms of how you spend your time, so it is appreciative that you're taking the next 20 to 30 minutes to spend with me here on the People's Voice podcast. As always, if this information is valuable and you find this to be informative, we do ask that you subscribe to the podcast. That way you'll be notified each and every time that we put out an episode. We put out a new episode each and every Friday on all podcast platforms. And we put out a video on YouTube every week of the podcast for those of you who like to watch the podcast. But as always, we thank everyone for listening today, and welcome to the People's Voice podcast. So today I want to get into talking about cars and your privacy. And I'm coming with this today because there was a recent report that was put out by the Mozilla Foundation. And in this report, they detailed they detailed the amounts of privacy, I should say the amount of data that's collected on you by your cars, and the violation of privacy. At least that's how I feel it's a violation of privacy, but I'll get into that. But the amount of data that they can collect on you, and then how your privacy and your personal information is basically shared and sold amongst many companies that do business with the car manufacturers. So that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about cars and your privacy. So, today in the society that we live in, we, have cars that do all wonderful and great things, right? And a lot of the cars that are sold today have a huge amount of technology in them. Confession, I do have a car that has quite a bit of technology as well. And reading this report, I was definitely a bit disturbed because, and I've said it before in this podcast before, I'm a huge privacy advocate. And, I do as much as I can to keep my personal information from being shared and sold and just being shared without any regard. But even the steps that I've taken personally to try to protect my information, we utilize so much technology that, there are certain times where you just go, wow, I can't even believe, didn't even take a step back to think about how my information is being shared utilizing my car. So today I'm going to talk about this report that the Mozilla Foundation put out. And I think, for those of you who haven't heard the story, you're going to be pretty taken back by it. So, again, let me go into the report a little bit of what they detailed. So what they did was, and I'll just pull it up here for those of you who are watching the podcast. I'll pull it up here on the screen so you can also see what I'm looking at the same time. But what they did was they put out a report, or I should say they did a report, a research on the number of cars that, or car manufacturers, I should say, that are currently utilizing your personal information in their vehicles. And and I pulled it up here on my screen, and it's quite interesting because the amount of data that these cars pull on us is outstanding in terms of the amount of information that they can gather. Now, they gather this information because all of these cars that have all of this technology now, each of these cars have privacy policies and also terms and condition policies, just as similar like you see when you sign up for app on your phone or your streaming services and things of that nature. But Mozilla, what they did was they surveyed 25 different car manufacturers and looked through their privacy policies, and also their terms and conditions to kind of figure out what information is being shared, B, who is it being shared with, and then C, what can you do about it in terms of based on the policies that they provided, that the policies that the car manufacturers provided. So here, what I have here on the screen for those of you who are listening, I have the actual list of the 25 manufacturers that they surveyed in this report. And when I tell you, it is every car manufacturer that you can think of, at least that I can think of, especially those that are prominent here in the United States. You have BMW, Fiat, Jeep, Volkswagen, Toyota, Lexus, Nissan, Honda, Chevrolet, Ford, and the list goes on and on and on. And, like I said in the beginning, I was taken back because I clearly drive one of these cars from one of these manufacturers. And when I kind of researched the manufacturer of the car that I drive, I was like, whoa, are you serious? I mean, and it's luxury cars too, because I know people might say, well, no, trust me, Mercedes-Benz, Audi is on here, Tesla is on here, and Tesla is a whole another animal regarding this. But the report basically went through these 25 manufacturers to find out what their privacy policies are, what information they're collecting, and, how, how stringent or how difficult it is to actually, go through these policies and get anything rectified in terms of having your information removed. So, one of the things that they did, they kind of broke it down, and I love the name of their report. Their report is Privacy Not Included. It says warning label, privacy not included. Cars have been designated as the official worst category of products for privacy that they have ever reviewed. This is from their report. But what they did was they kind of broke it down into, what's being collected, and also, different categories to explain, what's being shared. So one of the first categories they have here, they say that they reviewed 25 brands in their research, and they found 25 dings. And dings is kind of how they score, the severity of the information that's being shared. And literally, they said every car brand that they looked at collects more personal data than necessary and uses that information for a reason other than to operate your vehicle. So again, because one of the things that comes up, especially when you're using the apps in the car, say, well, in order to operate this, you're going to have sign into this app or to that app. And what they found in their research is that that's not the case, that this information is actually being utilized. There's more information being utilized than just the operation of your car. One of the things that I wanted to point out in the report, it says that from what they discovered, they said it's bad enough that these corporations that own the cars have all this personal information on you, but they use their own research, marketing. They use this information for their own research and marketing, and of course, business purposes. But what they found out in this report is that of the car brands, the 25 car brands that they researched, they say most of the car brands we researched say they can share your personal data with service providers, data brokers, and other businesses with no without you knowing. They can share that information without you knowing. So basically, in that privacy policy, when you guys sign up, or when you get these cars and when you sign up for these apps, there's a privacy policy, and that privacy policy kind of dictates this, that, hey, we can share this information. We don't have to notify you at all. One of the other things that I wanted to point out in this, it kind of went through, the data, the control that you have over your data after you get rid of the car, right? Let's say you get this new car, you sell it, or you trade it in, whatever you do. That data stays with the car. You have no control over being able to take that data back. It's not like you can just go in and, delete all of the data. This data is now stored on their services or on their cloud servers. And that information basically is on there forever. And that was one of the things that they pointed out in this study, that this information is not, you're not able to retrieve this information once you get it back. So, once you give it up. So what is it that, one of the things that I wanted to kind of point out about this, or at least for myself, I wanted to find out, okay, they're taking this information. Who are they sharing this information with, right? And again, I'm reading this report from Mozilla, from the Mozilla Foundation, and they put like a small graphic here, and I'll pull it up here for those of you who are watching the video. And the graphic says, where does all your data go? And literally, they have a graphic that shows that your information goes from your car up into the apps, and then it goes to a variety of people, including service providers, other third-party vendors, other drivers, depending on what information can be shared between car to car. Then you have dealerships. This information goes back to the dealership so they can find out information about you, so they can market to you again, to give you, to try to get you to come in to buy another car. Obviously, social media apps, because each of these cars have multiple social media apps. But the one that really disturbed me was the government and law enforcement. Information from your car can be pulled from law enforcement, and it doesn't take a very, strong request, because it doesn't take like a warrant or something like that. Matter of fact, let me play this clip from News Nation, and they spoke with Jen Coltrider, who is with the Mozilla Foundation and was responsible for this research. I want you to hear what she says about what law enforcement can do in terms of pulling information from your car, your personal information from your car. It's quite interesting. So let me play this and then we'll continue.
And that collects data, whether it's data just about you, but where you travel. And then the scary thing is they have heaps and heaps and heaps of data, more data than just about anything we've ever reviewed. But then they share it and sometimes sell it very liberally. One of the biggest things that raised my eyebrows was a company like Hyundai that says they can share it with law enforcement or government based simply on an informal request. And that gets really frightening.
Yeah.
An informal request. So that means that they don't sorry about that. And they don't have to put a warrant in or anything to get this information from your car. They can literally just request this information. And these car makers, and I think she was referring to Hyundai there, but many of these car makers will just give this information without your knowledge. And this is where the issue really comes in. Now, in terms of laws and guidelines here in the United States, obviously I'm here in the United States, so this is why I'm talking about this. I should say I'm covering some of the guidelines here in the United States. So here in the United States, the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration is the governing body that kind of oversees a lot of what goes on in terms of passenger vehicles here in the United States. And also you have the DOT, Department of Transportation. You also have, I'm trying to think of the other government entity, but basically the National Highway Transportation and Safety Administration oversees vehicle safety and things of that nature here in the United States. Anyway, I bring that up because this has been brought to them to say, hey, can we have some consumer protections in here to avoid car makers from doing this? I'm reading directly from their site, and it says here the national, I'll just call it the NHTSA, has broad regulatory authority over the safety of passenger vehicles and to issue voluntary guidance and mandate standards through a rulemaking process to address safety. It says its safety regulations and voluntary guidance apply primarily to manufacturers of motor vehicles and motor vehicle equipment. They say that the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration takes consumer privacy seriously, and I want to make sure I emphasize that, but does not have a unique role or specific authority to regulate consumer privacy or third parties in context of motor vehicles or motor vehicle data to enforce consumer privacy laws. And I specifically read that because one of the first things that I, as a consumer, I said, well, there's got to be some type of regulation or some type of law that can prevent these car manufacturers from collecting all this data. Nope, not here. Now, in California does have the Consumer Protection, the California Consumer Privacy Act. And with the California Consumer Privacy Act, manufacturers are, well, I shouldn't say that, but companies, you do have some rights in California in terms of how your information can be shared and how it can be collected. I'm reading right here from the site, from the state of California Department of Justice site. And it clearly says here that with your personal information, you have a right to know about your personal information a business collects about you. You also have the right to delete that personal information. Now, they say there's some some exceptions. You also have the right to opt out of the sale and sharing of that information, of your personal information. And then, of course, you have the right to non-discrimination for exercising your consumer protection, your Consumer Privacy Act rights. Now, that's great, but that's California. Obviously, the California Consumer Privacy Act doesn't protect the rest of the country. So this is where we become super exposed. Now, one of the things that was interesting to me, and I was reading that a lot of these government agencies, I shouldn't say a lot of these government agencies, I'll just say from what I read, a lot of reasons why these agencies don't want to get involved in terms of regulation is because they believe that this information that is being collected is actually assist in safety, because they believe that the information that is being pulled can then be later utilized to analyze, crashes and other, safety concerns that would allow them to then enhance safety measures going forward. So it's a very, very gray line in terms of who wants to get involved and who doesn't want to get involved from a legal and governmental standpoint. One of the other things that I wanted to point out was just the amount, just the what is being collected, right? Because like I said before, there's a ton of information that is collected on you by these car manufacturers. I really didn't point out all of the information that is pulled on, or I should say provided by these companies. But I wanted to talk about that a little bit before we close out here. And I'm just I'm scrolling because I had that information. Oh, here it is right here in front of me. I just wanted to pull it up on the screen. And for those of you who are listening, I'm reading again from a report that was done by the Mozilla Foundation in terms of privacy and what information is being collected by your car. But here I'm reading right from their site, and they listed the number of pieces of information that is collected from your car about you. And literally it is 17 rows or 17 columns, I should say, of information. They collect name, address, phone number, email, age, date of birth, financial account numbers, credit card numbers, debit card numbers. Because remember, a lot of these transactions, once your phone connects to these cars, this information is then gathered that way. And then a lot of these cars also have the ability to add your banking apps and other app information and other apps that you use on your phone. A lot of these cars, you can pull that information up in your cars as well. And these companies are collecting all of this data. The one that really threw me is that they can collect medical information, health insurance information, because a lot of times when you're using those health apps, this information is being circulated into your car because you're using it either from your phone and you connected your phone to your car, or a lot of these cars now have the ability to pull these type of apps up on their screens. But the one that really threw me was they can collect information about sex life and sexual orientation information. Now, it's not clear how they pull this information off, and I think it was Nissan that was the car manufacturer that was identified as having the ability to do that based on their privacy policy. But I mean, the amount of information that they could pull is truly disturbing, and there's very little protection from a governmental standpoint to prevent these car manufacturers from doing this. But what can we do as consumers, right? Not much in terms of government policy, but actionable things that we can do as individuals. Well, one of the things that you can do, and again, I'm reading here from this report from the Mozilla Foundation. They also provided some tips, which I thought was great. And I've already passed this out to my circle and my network. First thing is, do not consent to advertisements. I mean, I can't tell you how many times an advertisement may pop up on the phone when you're doing a search or you're jumping on Facebook or YouTube. I don't click on them. I would definitely not do it in my car. But that's one of the first things that they point out. And they have a whole list of things that you shouldn't do. I won't go through all of them, but I think some of the key ones is before you resell your car, make sure that you notify the company because there are certain opt-outs that you can request to have your information taken out, but you have to call the company to do that. Again, that's not something that you can voluntarily do yourself most of the time through a lot of these apps that are in the cars. Because remember, also, these cars are not just apps. These cars have microphones. These cars have cameras in and external cameras. There's a lot of information that's being collected, not to mention, pretty much all of them have GPS, so they constantly know where your location is and where you're at and the places that you go. It also recommends to use strong passwords and set up two-factor authentication for apps and services. But it also says before you give access to only give access to apps and third parties that you trust, right? So listen, banking information, you kind of got to go on the trust factor, right? You're working with a bank and you want to use their services. You kind of got to accept that they have that information, and that information could potentially be shared, but it recommends that you only use data or give access to third-party apps or to apps that you trust. Again, like I said, I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I think one of the key things is also opt out of your mobile's device location sharing. A lot of times it will ask you, can you share, it'll ask you, can we access, or do you grant access to location sharing from your phone? Opt out from that, because that means that when you leave your car and you have your location on, and then you come back to your car and reconnect, that information can be uploaded to the car manufacturer so they can see everywhere you've gone even after you've left your car. Again, this is key information, but these are just some of the small things that you can do to protect yourself and to protect your data and your personal information, because I don't know how many people know about this, but that we definitely need to get this word out. And I know we buy a car, we get excited, we like all the features, but remember, and I've said this 1,000 times, convenience comes with the cost. There is a cost to convenience. And the cost in this particular case is that you're paying with your personal information. So I know I've given a lot of information. As always, all of these links will be in the video when I post it on YouTube, so you can review this report and also go through all of the information that I covered here on the podcast today. But as always, if this information was valuable and you find it informative, we do ask that you subscribe to the podcast, and then you can also leave a comment on any of the social media platforms. You can reach me at I am Trey Evans on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. You can also reach me at Trey Evans on LinkedIn. And obviously we have the YouTube channel, Trey Evans, where you can leave a comment as well. So that is my time for today. As always, dreams are not just for sleeping. Please wake up and live your dreams. My name is Trey Evans. The people's voice. Tell somebody about the dream. Salute. The people's voice.